Hey everybody, this is Alexander Fitzgerald or Assassinato, and today we're going to be discussing some live hands. So these are some hands that I played recently. This was a $600 six max I played up at Blackhawk, and we get dealt kings like the first hand of the tournament. And I am so not ready. I was playing late the night before, not much sleep, and then I drank way too much caffeine, so I'm kind of just jittery at this point. And then I look down at kings and I go, whoa, this is going to be a fun day. So obviously, I think most of you are raising with kings. Now, here's where things get interesting. We get three bet by a local solid player. So you get three bet by the local solid player. What would you like to do here? Would you like to just call or would you like to four bet? And I'm going to give you about 3 seconds for each decision. So if you'd like more time, pause. Well, you should be four betting because you most likely have the best hand. Many people don't like four betting because they don't know what to do if they're five bet. But anytime there's a rebuy in play, you're just going to have to play your kings pretty aggressively versus most players at $600, $500, $300 tournaments, those lower buy-ins, because there's still enough value in there. And you guys are deep enough to where you could actually just call the five bet a lot of the time. So we four bet here and we get called. And the board comes king 3-7, and we're obviously very happy to have top set, but the problem is it's really difficult for him to have anything. So what do you think you should do here? Go ahead, check or bet. We bet 3,000, and we'll discuss why we do that in just a second. And the local solid player calls. The turn is the two of spades. It's on us. Check or bet. We check here. This player bets 10,000. It's on us. Fold, call, or raise. We call. The river is the jack of spades. Check or bet. We check here, and this player moves. Actually, this player bet I think just 30,000, and then I move them all in. But obviously, you're going to go ahead and call here. Now, this was just a total cooler, and you can't blame this player for playing the way they did. However, what's really interesting is how to get the most money from this hand in general. So many people want to check this flop. Check is fine if you'd like, but what I prefer is you just bet some amount that you assume would never work. So you four bet pre-flop to 4.5K. What's the bet that would never succeed? If you were bluffing here, what bet would you assume would never do anything? If you just had like 10-8 of spades. Well, if you bet about 1/3 the pot and that was less than what you four bet pre-flop, it's very likely your opponent would not take kindly to that because a lot of people do play egotistically. Not saying this player did, but most people do. And they would feel very awkward about folding to that very small bet. So you might just see a random raise. You'll see a lot of floats as well, which is why we check on this turn. It's very difficult for this player to have anything on the turn. We really have the deck mauled at this point. So we check here and allow him to fire all of his 10-9 suiteds or Jack 10 offsuits or whatever he floated us with on the flop. Now, some people do like to lead on the river. I would say if he's actually a decent player, you can go ahead and let him fire again on the river. It's possible he might just bluff and take the rebuy. In this case, he actually had a hand. So yeah, let's go to the next one. So here you have ace-6 of diamonds. You raise on the button. So you now have, unless somebody else doubled up on the first hand, you're the chip leader of the tournament, the $600 live event. So that's pretty neat. So you raise, and a recreational player calls you out of the big blind. So you're in Colorado. This is definitely a mountain man. Came to play some cards. So the board comes ace, king, 9 with 2 diamonds. It's check to you. Check or bet. We fire here, and he calls. The turn is the 8 of hearts. It is check to us. Check or bet. We bet, and this player calls, and the river is the 3 of spades. It's check to us. Check or bet. We fire again, and this player calls, and we end up winning this pot, which was, wow, was it 33 big blinds? Wow. Now, what's important here is with a recreational opponent, you don't want to be slow playing at any point. So I see many people playing like a $500 buy-in tournament, a $300 buy-in tournament, a $600 buy-in tournament, and they'll check back here because they go, well, what do I do if you check raises? Well, you have the nut flush draw. You obviously just call. Or they say, I'm hoping to induce bets on the turn. But the truth is, with a lot of recreational players, they're just gonna they'll call you with a king or a nine here, and they'll probably call you with a king or a nine on the turn as well, just because the flush draw missed. Now here, if you wanted to check back on this river, I'd really encourage you to just bet something, because when that flush draw misses, it is highly unlikely a recreational player is going to fold. If you bet 25%, 33% pot, you'd have to bet about half pot before they start thinking, and even then you have a good chance of being called. I did just go ahead and bet just the gimme bet, and we did get called, and yeah, that helps us pad our stack. So here, young Reg goes ahead and opens on the button, and we have ace-7 offsuit. And I'm gonna let you know I don't love this hand, but there's a lot of tells you can take advantage of live, so we'll see if they come up on this hand. I'll check out my notes, but it's on you with ace-7 off. So first off, would you fold here? Would you call, or would you 3-bet? I generally like 3-betting here. I do like having an ace blocker. Please check the bet size that I use and compare it to what size you would use. So he made it 700. Since we're out of position, we're not in love with playing this pot. For multiple streets, position is as important as the number of streets you play. Obviously, if you just shove 17 big blinds pre-flop, position is not that important. If we just 3-bet with our ace blocker and he folds the majority of the time, that's fine. But he goes ahead and calls, so okay. So we see this flop. So the flop is jack of diamonds, 5 of diamonds, 2 of hearts. Unfortunately, we don't have the ace of diamonds. We have the ace of hearts. What would you like to do here? Check or bet? If you did want to bet, how much would you like to bet? We go ahead and bet 2,500. You could even bet a little bit smaller here. So typically, if you're betting about 1/3 pot, the bet needs to work about 25% of the time. If you're betting 25% pot, the bet needs to work a fifth of the time. There's actually a lot of the times where people just call because they're in position, versus a 3-bet. And then if they just completely brick, they go ahead and just muck their hand. So that actually is going to work a decent percentage of the time. Now here we bet 2,500, and math was never my strong suit. So we bet 2,500 to win 8,700. So, okay, the bet needs to work about 29% of the time. So we need a fold here about 1 time out of 3. There's a good chance we'll get that. So he does go ahead and call. Now the turn's the ace of clubs. It's on you. Would you like to check or bet here? We check, and he fires 7.5K. It's on us. Check or bet? Excuse me, full call or raise? We call here, and the river is the 10 of diamonds. It's on us. Check or bet? We check here, and he really lets us off easy, and we end up winning this pot. So let's break down what's going on here. So pre-flop, we're just going to get a lot of outright folds a lot of the time. And when he has like 10-9 of spades or a lot of hands that he calls with pre-flop, he's just going to fold a decent percentage of them on the flop. So a lot of the times the flop bet is profitable. Now, once he calls, things get a little bit hairier. Now, we hit this turn, but the problem we have is if we bet larger, it's possible we could get a jack to fold, but no better ace is folding. So the bet is somewhat pointless. You usually want to be betting for value or as a bluff, and neither really makes that much sense. And if you're betting to get value from a flush draw, I don't know if you're getting value from a flush draw, and you're also blocking some flush draws. So we check here, and I like the check a little bit more. I prefer the check because a lot of young regs just they they'll have some showdown value hands on this turn that they don't necessarily need to bluff with, but they will bluff with it because they're just more aggressive by nature. And a lot of them live don't know how to follow up with it. So what I mean by that is, let's say he had eights here. He doesn't necessarily need to turn that hand into a bluff because he does have some showdown value. And we are pot controlling with a number of aces and jacks, but you'll see a lot of young regs just go ahead and say, oh, it's been checked to me. I got to go ahead and fire, which actually gives us more value with this check call. Now, this is how live and online differ quite a bit. So we just check call on this turn where there's flush draws and I guess some gut shot straight draws and whatnot. I guess there's definitely some straight draws here. And with the straight draws and flush draws, a lot of people would fast play with their 2 pair, their sets and whatnot. And so when we check call on this turn, we also probably would have fired with our better aces a lot of the time. So when we check call on this turn, we're more or less telling a lot of good online players that I have a mediocre ace at best. So we're going to have to make a lot of judgment calls on this river. And if he has a diamond, that he wants to use as a blocker, we can expect to see a number of large bets on this river. But this is one of the value points of playing live is he doesn't actually take that spot. So if he was bluffing, that's really a great card because he could certainly have some flush draws he was semi-bluffing with on the turn. Our range is very weak and centered around one pair. If he did have something like a jack, you got to question why he bet it on that turn. So yeah, that was a good spot for us. So we pick up more chips on that pot. So here's the situation where we're really using a lot of live tells. So typically, this is an ace-3 offsuit in the big blind, 221 big blinds deep. And a recreational player who has just around a starting stack goes ahead and opens on the button. Now, this is a spot where a call is just totally fine. However, now that I've got the big stack, I'll be frank with you, when I'm playing these $600 tournaments, like a fourth place is not going to change my life. It's I just want to play a final table. I just want to see if I can win one. I don't get to play live nearly as much as I'd like. I have to play online most of the time just due to time constraints, just due to typically I'm teaching people how to play poker most days, so the time I have left over for poker doesn't allow me to drive an hour to the casino, play a full session, drive back. It's easier to just play online. That being said, when I do get to play live, I want to just win something just because I want to get more live experience or just stay fresh. I have quite a bit of live experience, but sometimes you just get rusty when it's been a couple of months, so you want to make sure you're still playing final tables shorthanded, whatnot. So we're trying to go for the win at this point. And the great thing about live players, recreational players, is they will tell you what part of their range they're in based on their reactions to your bets. So it gets raised to me. I 3-bet here with the ace blocker, and he shows genuine hesitancy. He shows genuine hesitancy when we 3-bet here. So what does that let you know? Okay, so the board comes 7 of clubs, 6 of clubs, 3 diamonds. Okay, it's not nothing, but it's not the greatest flop we've ever seen in our life. It's on us. What would we like to do? Check a bet. Let's put you in a situation you might not have been before. Let's go. So we fire here, just 2.5K. Please compare your bet size to the one you see on the screen. And he calls very quickly. Just kind of beats us into the pot. Turns the 8 of diamonds. What do you like doing here? All right. We go ahead and fire 12.5K. So just around the size of the pot. Pro tip, when you're playing live, if you know the pot size, you're the only one who knows the pot size. Most of these guys are just judging your bet size based on what they saw the last bet as. So why are we doing what we did here? And by the way, I'm not done firing if he calls. So here's the deal. So it's nice. If the turn's an ace, if the turn's a 3, most likely we have the best hand. So we don't have nothing. But we bet 1/3 pot because 1/3 pot needs to work about 25% of the time. And we're likely going to get a fold more than a quarter of the time. Why is that? Because he's going to have a lot of just random, say like Jack 8 of hearts or Queen 9 of spades that wanted to see the flop and is going to go, all right, I missed. Okay, that's that. And maybe some like Jack 10 offsuits in hands like that. Now, when he beats you into the pot, that's a live player. A lot of times, recreational live players, going back to the old days, that strong means weak. So, excuse me, I almost coughed right into the microphone, which would have been very rude to you headphones users. Now, if he beats you into the pot, that's kind of like, hey, I really like my hand over here. Please stop betting. So what is that? Well, think about it. There's flush draws and straight draws on that board. So it's possible he would have raised with sets or 2 pairs to protect his hand and to also get value from it. Because there's a lot of dangerous turn cards for a set or 2 pair. A lot of straight cards or flush cards come in on the turn. So it's possible 8s, 9s, or 10s, if you just flatted with those pre-flop, might have raised on this board. This is a very good board for them. So over pairs in sets and 2 pairs, we can somewhat rule out. And additionally, we have a bit of a timing tell right here, which is a lot of the times, let's say he had 2 pair and he did decide to call. Well, he might actually weigh his options a little bit before he does that. So let's say he's got 7, 6 of diamonds. He has a huge hand right now. He might be asking himself, should I raise right now? I might shut down the betting, but I get to protect my hand and maybe I get more money from it. Should I try to trap this guy? He's got a lot to think about. But if he's got something like ace 6 of diamonds, he doesn't have anything to think about. If he's got like 6, 5 of spades, he doesn't have much to think about. If he's got pocket 4s, he's got pocket 5s, he doesn't have much to think about. So a lot of those 1 pair hands know that they need to call. but they're also really hoping you don't fire something big on this turn, which is exactly what we do. So this turn comes out, and this isn't really that good of a card for a 7, 6, or 3, or like 4s or 5s or anything like that. So I guess 5s did make an open-ended straight draw, but we're not done with the hand right now. So what's going to happen here with a lot of live players is you do this big bet. So first of all, how often does this bet need to work as a total bluff? Because we assume we're bluffing right now. Most likely our 3 is not the best hand. It's going to be the best hand some percentage of the time. But even if he's got something like Queen Jack of clubs and he folds right here, that's a lot of equity we just folded out, and the river was going to be very difficult to play. So we're totally fine with that. So this bet doesn't even need to work 50% of the time. It needs to work 49% of the time and change or whatever it is. And it's really likely you're going to get more folds than that because, like we said, a lot of the times our opponent's just holding on for dear life with a 7 or a 6. Now, I usually can't make reads this exact thing online, but live people give away a lot of physical tells, timing tells, etc. But also, let's say so here's something he did that caused him some issues, in my opinion. When I put this bet out here, he took about a minute before he decided to do anything. And listen, you guys have done. The thing about poker. I'm trying not to cuss. The thing about poker is there's a lot of things that are theoretically correct to do, but people forget you're allowed to look at the other guy and realize whether he's full of crap or not. You can just look. We've all been in business deals or relationships where we knew somebody was putting us on. We knew somebody was doing something they shouldn't do, and we worked with that information. And it's the same thing. And I don't know why when people play cash games or tournaments, they won't just look at the other person and try to give them some kind of specific read. So I looked at this guy for a minute, and I think anybody could have read it on his face. He had a big, genuine problem. So what is that? Well, if he turned 2 pair with like 8-7, I don't think he'd have a big problem. He'd just go, well, I have top 2 pair right now. It's most likely the best hand. Should I get it in right now, or should I trap? And most of the time when they have 2 pair or a set, they just go, wow, there's way too many flush draws and straight draws on this board. Okay, this pot's big enough, quote unquote. Let's do something with it. So even if he had 8s and he turned a set, we're probably about to hear about it. If he just calls us right now on this board with 2 flush draws and straight draws up the wazoo, it is most likely 1 pair or 2 very weak, or like a very weak 2 pair. But most likely it's 1 pair combination wise. So what does that mean? Well, that means a lot of the times he's not going to have a club draw the majority of the time. So you can bluff clubs on the river, you can bluff diamonds on the river, you can bluff overcards on the river. So you could keep firing, and it's called no limit hold'em. You could overbet if you'd like. So a lot of people, they buy into like a $600 live tournament, and that's not nothing. That's a decent amount of money for most people, and they want to get value from it. They at least want to get 4 or 5 hours of entertainment out of their buy-in. And if you are telling them in one of the first hands they play, like, hey, we can play for all of this, a lot of the times they will back down. So here you have king queen offsuit, and it's folded to you on the button. You're obviously playing this. So you raise, and this recreational player raises to the big in the big blind. I think this was the same player we just 3-bet double barreled. So there might be a little bit of tilt there. We don't really know. So he 3-bets. We're going to take a flop, and the board comes king of diamonds, jack of diamonds, 8 of hearts, and he bets 3K and 8.7. Go ahead, full call or raise. Okay, so this is something you need to know with recreational players in like $600 tournaments, $500 tournaments. When they bet very small on boards with flush draws and straight draws, they don't have it. If they had 2 pair, if they had sets, if they had top pair, top kicker, they bet big because they really do not want the flush draws and straight draws to get in there. So they're trying to protect their hand. So if this is a jack a lot of the time, this is pocket queens a lot of the time, this is tens a lot of the time, you have the best hand, and he's going to call you with a lot of these inferior combinations just because he could put you on diamond draws, straight draws, etc. Also, just because he might be on a little bit of tilt. So we raise here, and he calls. The turn's the 9 of spades, not a perfect hand because maybe he does have some queen tens. He checks you, check or bet. I would still recommend going for a little bit of value. So we fire here, and he folds. You're still getting called by diamond draws. I think you honestly still get called by a number of jacks. Actually, I was surprised when he folded just because most recreational players give you the call right there. So he actually he was a little bit. I think he had a few more chips than that. That might be a typo on my part. My apologies. So that made that a little bit more complicated. If you check back that turn, no worries. But I would generally recommend betting a little something, or if you bet a little bit smaller, that's okay. And if he just rips it there on that turn, 9 times out of 10, that's he hit his queen 10 or he hit his pocket nines or whatever it is. You don't have to worry about it too much. And by the way, if you're playing live, I'd recommend just talking to the person. I am shocked how often people just are lackadaisical and relaxed when you talk to them into an all-in. When you talk to them during an all-in pot and then you fold and they just show you the nuts. So give yourself that chance. So here we have Ace Eight of Spades in this $600 tournament, $600 six max. We raise small blind calls, big blind calls. The board comes Ace of Diamonds, Jack of Diamonds, Five of Clubs. Both these players check to you. These are recreational players as well. So these are more casual players. It's check to you. Check about. We fire here 2,000, and we get called by two players. The turn's the Eight of Hearts. It gets checked to us. Check a bet. Well, you should go ahead and fire that. So we fire. And essentially, if you bet half pot or less, most of your recreational opponents are going to fold nothing. So if you want to get extreme value, I'd really recommend just walking the dog. Small blind folds, big blind calls. The river's the three of spades. And do I remember this hand right? This was super weird. So he checks and he has this look like, whoa, on the river when he checks. And I go, what in the world is that? So that's either I've got my missed flush draw and I'm just goofing off. I don't know why people do that. That's just been my experience. Or something's up. I didn't know what was up. I was thinking, does this clown have a set of threes? I didn't know what it was, so check this out. So I checked. I told you they don't fold anything if you bet small on the turn. I didn't think that. I felt so good about myself checking that river. Because normally I value bet that like every single time, but it was that was so weird. He so I don't some guys don't have a good poker face. So when I've seen the really weird ostentatious behavior on the check on that river, it's either been I've got a mediocre pair, I'm not going to pay another bet. I'm really hoping you're weirded out by how I'm checking right here, or it's a missed flush draw, or I don't know why missed flush draws just kind of get the heebie-jeebies. I don't know how to word it. They get this weird like tension when they're watching the river card. Like the river card is going to solve everything, and when it comes out there, they're just like not ready for it. But it was the weirdest thing in the world. So he checked, I checked back. So that's not really the interesting part of the hand. That was just me kind of getting lucky on a. You should just go ahead and fire that river. I got really lucky to go with my gut on that one. I've definitely checked back there before, and then it's been like ace nine, and I thought to myself, why didn't I play this the most basic way? So that was, the fun part about this game is you're allowed to do anything you want if you buy in. There's no advisory board. There's no regulation committee. It's your money. You can do anything you want with it. So I decided to take advantage of that privilege right there. So here, I'd really recommend you bet something on the flop because a lot of the times the better aces would have three bet you pre-flop. And a jack is still going to call you. Weaker aces is still going to call you. Diamonds is still going to call you. A lot of gut shots is still going to call you. On the turn, when you make aces and eights, yeah, you should go ahead and fire. Is it? You should go ahead and fire again. Yeah. So sorry, I was trying to remember some about this hand. I'm not remembering it all that well. You should fire again because a jack's probably still going to call you. Like we saw, if you bet 4K here, nobody wants to fold anything live. Recreational players are goofy. Everybody says poker's still dead, right? Everybody says, oh, no money to be made in poker anymore. Okay. All right, man. First time I heard that was 2006. Somebody told me poker is dying. Don't ever buy that. People love to goof off with their money. So here we're a little bit deeper in the tournament. The people behind us have 27 big blinds, 49 big blinds, 39 big blinds. We raise with the aces. And Button calls. Button's a little bit of a looser player. Definitely more recreational in nature. Big blind calls us. And the board comes 6-5-4. Big blind checks. It's on us. Check or bet. We check here. And the button bets 12,000. Big blind folds. It's on us. Would we like to fold, call, or raise? We put our chips in. He calls. He ends up having ace seven, and we hold. So this is a play I actually do a lot, and I don't get the opportunity to discuss it enough. So let's say live you have a loose aggressive player on that button and the board just comes low cards. It looks like nobody likely hit any of that. Go ahead and check to them a lot of the time because a lot of live players, when everybody checks to them on the flop and they're on the button, they take it as, oh, I got a bet here. Otherwise, I'm being a really weak player. And so you'll get a lot of bluff bets out of them on the flop. And if he does have ace six, ace five, sevens, eights, nines, tens, or even I've been called here by ace four when I jam because they just want to put you on a draw and they don't have many chips left back anyway. So we just go ahead and put it in there. Very fun value jam. And as we saw, it did pay off. Turn card was spicy, but we ended up holding. So here we have the jack eight of clubs. And let's see, do I have the stack sizes right? Yeah. I'll double check throughout this hand. Okay, so here, a little bit deeper in the tournament, we have jack eight of clubs. Just a side note, I love six max. I get to do so much more for six max with six max. I like playing any tournament, but sometimes you play full ring and it's a very juicy game. It's the type of game you should be in. But every pot's five ways, so you got to hit some cards, right? And sometimes it's just not your month. And that can definitely be dispiriting, especially with the commute and how long it takes live and whatnot. But man, six max, God, you just get to work heads up so often. And that gives you so many more options. Example here, we have jack eight of clubs. So jack eight of clubs, we're heads up. It gets folded around to us in the small blind. So we raise here. Younger guy, I don't really know too much about him. I do know that he definitely looked like he knew his way around the table. So he handled the chips well. He definitely he showed up to play. So the board comes 10 of clubs, 5 of spades, 2 of hearts. It's on us. Check or bet. We fire here, 5,000. He calls automatically. The turn's the queen of clubs. It's on us here. Okay, so he's got a few more chips in this. So if I remember correctly, maybe like 60 or 70,000. Sorry, I wrote that down wrong. So he's got like 60 or 70K. What does he have? I'm trying to remember that. Yeah, it was more than this. I remember eyeballing the stack real quick. So I wrote that down wrong. My apologies. So he's got a few more chips than that. My apologies. Go ahead. So we bet large here. And remember, you're the only one who knows the size of the pot. So that bet needs to work less than 50% of the time. But it's really likely to work way more than that. Because here's the deal. When you bet and he calls you automatically there, when it's a young guy at the casino, that just means it's a day ending and why. He's looking at this board and he goes, you either have a 10 or you don't, buddy. And I don't think you have a 10 all that often. So he's floating you with absolutely everything. Now, here's the problem. He's got a point. Because what he can do here, what most people do is they check and then he just bets and takes the pot. Or they bet something small and then he can just do the same trick. He can just call you. He can float you with a lot of combinations. And then if you check on the river, you can do a big bluff. So it's not a bad way to play. It just shouldn't work against you. So he calls you really quick. And also the quick call, I think, tells us a little something because I think if he had a 10, most of the young guys are good enough to know they should raise some 10s there for value because we're probably bet calling with some gut shots like ace X, ace 3, ace 4, ace 5, ace 2, sixes, 3s, 4s, 7s, 8s, hands like that. There's probably a lot of hands we bet call. Hell, a lot of people would probably bet call like ace king high, ace queen high. So you should really sit there and think about raising a lot of his 10s. So when he just quick calls you there, that's going to be a lot of floats. That's going to be a lot of hands that are willing to fold on this turn, right? A lot of ace highs, a lot of like 4s or 3s or 6s or 5-6 suited or 5-7 suited or something like that. Not really floats, just not really his best combinations. Not really hands he needed to think about. So he quick calls us there. I'm pretty sure he's at the ass end of his range. So, and this is why I like the bigger bets on the turn. So let's say he actually had 50.5K. That's why I was really specific about that. If he did, you should probably just bet like 10K on this turn and then just shove river because you'll get enough folds that it's worth it. You can set him up for the river jam real nice. But also, I still don't love that play as much with live players because live players do this thing where they can't really count the chips in the pot. So they get to the river and they get to see your hand if they call and their curiosity is really ramped up and they go, oh, there's like a bajillion chips in that middle. Okay, I guess I call. And you've really unintentionally helped them play better. Versus if you do a massive turn bet, it's probably the only one of those they've seen that month because most people don't bet the size of the pot or slightly over bet the turn. And they don't really know what to do with that. And to be fair to them, most of the time they see that that's like aces that's panicking because there's lots of flush draws and straight draws out there, or it's a set that's panicking. So it's really strong hands that they should be folding to a lot of the time. So he had a few more chips. I decided to bet bigger. And then that also, if he does call me on the turn, well, he's just calling with flush draws and straight draws on this turn. So there's a good chance he would have raised his sets and two pairs and whatnot. So, the hand's not over. We could hit the river and then shove for value. We could decide to bluff. Let's say the river's like a king. We could definitely consider jamming river and whatnot. So there's definitely still options. He did go ahead and just fold right there. So here we have kings. So it's much deeper in the tournament. I think we're pretty close to the money at this point. So we raise with the kings, and we get called by button and small blind, and big blind folds. And the board comes queen 5-7. Small blind checks. It's on us. Check a bet. We fire here. I would check here more if I had a more active regular button, but a lot of the times when you're playing in smaller markets, these players just tend to be passive in nature. So you can take a much more direct approach, which is just if you think you have the best hand, just keep value betting and don't do bets they can really think about. The turn's the four diamonds, very nice. It gets checked to us, check our bet. We fire again for value, and he calls. The river's the eight of clubs, and he checks. It's on you, check or bet. So, okay, I'll give you something here. It's going to make it a lot easier. So he checks. What do you think he should do? Obviously, that's a pretty horrible river card. So if you did check back, that's fine. However, he checks and is in obvious distress. What do you do? He sees the river and just has this like slow blink, like, ugh. I looked up just for a second and saw it, right? I looked down, looked up, saw it. So he doesn't look in love with the river. Okay, so what do you do? All right. That's probably a queen. He doesn't love that river. So I bet real small. I probably could have bet smaller. So he calls. This is why he was in stress. He had his straight. He didn't like the flush draw coming in. That was, you're not value betting enough until you accidentally value bet the second best hand. But I really pushed that one. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. That one stunk. So anyway, that was pretty much it for this tournament. One of the next couple of hands, the blinds went up. This same person I gave all my chips to. The small blind raised on the button, and I shoved with sevens in the big blind. And he called, and he had sixes, and he goes, "Oh man, nice hand." And I was thinking immediately, "Oh, he's way too polite. God loves this guy." And sure enough, six in the door. But such is life, you know what I mean? You're not going to win them all. Anyways, thank you for joining me today, guys. I hope you had a good time. If you want more training content just like this, be sure to go to pokerheadrush.com, my website. So if you go to that website, you can sign up for my daily strategic newsletter. And for signing up, you get 3 free training products. So you'll get 1 training pack on how to triple barrel bluff people. If you really enjoyed the bluffs in this lesson, you'll really like that one. There's also a lesson on how to play ace king when it misses the flop, when it hits the flop, when it misses the flop, everything. It's all about how to play ace king. I put one of my older training packs in there for free. It's about how to 3-bet people. It's definitely, people really enjoy it, but yeah, it's a little bit older, but that one's there if you want to check that out. You can get all of that at pokerheadrush.com. It's free to join the newsletter, and you can unsubscribe at any time for free. So you can just take the 3 free training products if you'd like, and then just unsubscribe. That's totally fine. And if you want to talk to me about private lessons, be sure to reach out at alex@pokerheadrush.com. That email address one more time, alex@pokerheadrush.com. All right, guys, thank you for your time. Good luck to you at the tables, and I'll see you for the next one of these. Take care.